The champagne in my glass sparkled under the ballroom lights as I watched my daughter, Elisa, approach the microphone. My heart swelled with pride. At 35, she stood tall and confident in her tailored suit, the spitting image of me when I was her age, except she wore her ambition more openly than I ever dared. "Welcome everyone to Moretti Design's 40th anniversary celebration," she announced, her voice carrying across the crowded room. "This company began as my mother's dream in our garage. Today, we're the leading interior design firm in the region." Applause erupted, and I smiled politely, nodding at familiar faces. Clients, partners, employees who'd been with me since the beginning. My husband Paolo stood a few feet away, chatting with investors, occasionally glancing in my direction with that smile that still, after 37 years of marriage, made my stomach flutter. "As we look to the future," Elisa continued, "it's time for fresh vision and leadership." She paused, her eyes finding mine. Something flickered across her face. Determination, perhaps? Or was it apology? "That's why I'm pleased to announce that my mother, Maria Moretti, will be stepping down as CEO. Effective immediately." The room fell silent for a heartbeat before erupting in applause again. I froze, the champagne halfway to my lips, certain I'd misheard. Had we discussed this? No, we hadn't. Not once. Paolo was suddenly beside me, his hand on my lower back, smiling broadly for the cameras. "Smile, Maria," he whispered through clenched teeth. "Everyone's watching." So I did. I raised my glass, smiled my boardroom smile, and said nothing as my daughter continued detailing the exciting transition ahead. Paolo's hand pressed more firmly against my back, a warning. Later, I told myself. We'll sort this out later. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and questions about my retirement plans. Did I have any? At 58, retirement had never crossed my mind. Moretti Designs was my creation, my purpose, my identity. At home that night, Paolo loosened his tie and poured himself a whiskey. "You shouldn't be surprised," he said casually. "We've discussed this." "We most certainly have not," I replied, kicking off my heels. "Who is we, exactly?" "The board, Elisa, me." He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "The company needs fresh energy, Maria. You've been working yourself to exhaustion." "So you all decided behind my back?" I felt dizzy, like the floor beneath me was tilting. "I built that company from nothing, Paolo. Nothing. And now it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor." He approached me, hands outstretched. "You're a grandmother now. Wouldn't you rather spend time with Sophia than worrying about quarterly projections?" I stepped away from his reach. "Don't patronize me. This isn't about my granddaughter." "No," he admitted, his tone cooling. "It's about what's best for the company." "Which I still own controlling shares of," I reminded him. A strange expression crossed his face. Pity? Amusement? "Get some sleep, Maria. Everything will look clearer in the morning." But nothing was clearer the next morning. I woke early, dressed in my favorite power suit, and drove to the office before anyone else arrived. Or so I thought. When I entered the lobby, Elisa's assistant Carmen sat at the reception desk, looking uncomfortable. "Good morning, Mrs. Moretti," she said nervously. "Morning, Carmen. You're in early." "Yes, ma'am." She fidgeted with her pen. Ms. Elisa asked me to wait for you." I raised an eyebrow. "Did she now?" I swept past her to the elevator, swiped my access card, and frowned when the light flashed red. I tried again. Red. "Mrs. Moretti," Carmen called softly, approaching me like I was a wounded animal. "Your credentials have been updated." "Updated?" I repeated. "Deactivated," she clarified, unable to meet my eyes. "I'm supposed to escort you to clear your personal items." I felt heat rising in my cheeks. "This is ridiculous. Get me Elisa on the phone." "She's in meetings all morning, off-site," Carmen added quickly. I tried logging into my email from my phone. Access denied. I tried the company portal. Same result. "This is my company," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I founded it. I built it." Carmen glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "Mrs. Moretti," she whispered, You never read the ownership clause when the company went public 5 years ago, did you? My stomach dropped. The IPO. Paulo had handled most of the paperwork while I focused on client presentations. What ownership clause? The one that gives the board power to remove any executive deemed— I'm sorry, I shouldn't be telling you this. She straightened up, professional mask back in place. Your daughter left this for you. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, a substantial retirement package, and a brief note in Elisa's handwriting. Mom, I'm sorry it had to happen this way. You'll understand eventually. This is best for everyone. Best for everyone? Or best for her? I looked around the lobby. At the logo I'd designed myself. At the awards lining the walls. Achievements earned through decades of my sweat and sacrifice. And now I was being escorted out like a stranger. I'd like to collect my things, I said stiffly. In my office, soon to be Elisa's office, I numbly filled a box with photos and personal items. My mind raced through conversations from the past few months. Paulo's sudden interest in company finances, Elisa's frequent closed-door meetings with the board, the subtle suggestions that I'd take more time off. I had been blind. As I packed, I opened my desk drawer and found a small leather-bound notebook. My original business plan for Moretti Designs, written 30 years ago. Tucked inside was a photo of Paulo and me, standing proudly in front of our first office space. We looked so young, so united. When had that changed? The last item I reached for was a framed photo of Elisa's graduation from design school. I had been so proud, so eager to bring her into the business, to create a legacy. As I turned to leave, my eyes fell on the company safe hidden behind a painting. Only 3 people knew the combination: myself, Paulo, and our chief financial officer, Roberto. Acting on instinct, I swung the painting aside and dialed the combination. It clicked open, revealing folders of documents. I grabbed them, not knowing what I was looking for but certain I needed to understand what had happened. That's when I saw it. A preliminary report from an external auditor. Flipping through it, words jumped out at me. Financial discrepancies, unexplained transfers, recommend further investigation. The door opened behind me. Roberto stood there, his face ashen. Maria, he said quietly. You weren't supposed to see those. I clutched the papers tightly. What's going on, Roberto? What aren't you telling me? He closed the door and lowered his voice. Paulo came to me 6 months ago with concerns about the company's finances. But Maria, the irregularities. He hesitated. They all point to your accounts. I stared at him, disbelieving. That's impossible. Everything's in your name, he continued. The board doesn't know yet. But when they do— He shook his head. Maria, if these allegations are true, you could face criminal charges. My world tilted. Roberto, I would never— I know, he interrupted. That's why I've been quietly investigating. And I found something disturbing. He pulled out his phone and showed me a document. This authorization for fund transfers has your signature. I looked closer. It was my signature. Yet I had never seen this document before in my life. Someone is setting me up, I whispered. Roberto's eyes met mine. Yes. And they've been doing it for years. The question is, who would benefit most from your downfall? A chill ran through me as I realized. It had to be someone who knew my signature, my accounts, my business inside and out. Someone I trusted completely. The building's security system beeped. Someone was coming up in the elevator. You need to leave, Roberto urged. Take these files. I'll get you more evidence, but not here. They're watching. As the elevator doors opened, I slipped the documents into my bag and faced the reality that was rapidly becoming clear. My family business hadn't just pushed me out. They were positioning me to take a fall. I left the building with my small box of belongings, walking past employees who averted their eyes or offered awkward smiles. Had rumors already started? Did they think I'd done something wrong? The thought made my chest tight. In my car, I sat motionless, gripping the steering wheel. 40 years of work, and in less than 24 hours, it had been stripped away. My phone buzzed with a text from Paulo. Where are you? Come home so we can talk. Home. The word felt hollow now. Instead, I drove to the one place I knew I could think clearly. My mother's old apartment. She had passed away 2 years ago, but I couldn't bring myself to sell it. Now I was grateful for that sentimentality. The apartment was small and dusty, but it held no painful memories of betrayal. I spread the files across the kitchen table and began reading carefully. The financial reports showed a pattern of small transfers from company accounts to offshore entities, starting 3 years ago. Each transfer had my digital signature or approval. My phone rang. Elisa. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, please come home. Dad says you're upset, and I understand. But we need to talk about this transition like adults. Call me back. Like adults? I almost laughed. My own daughter had ambushed me in front of our entire industry, and she wanted to talk like adults? I continued examining the documents. The amounts weren't huge individually, 5,000 here, 12,000 there, but together they totaled over $2 million. The kind of slow, methodical fraud that could go unnoticed for years. My phone rang again. Paolo. I silenced it and kept reading. A knock at the door startled me. How did anyone know I was here? I peered through the peephole to see Roberto shifting nervously in the hallway. I opened the door cautiously. How did you find me? I asked. Your mother's place was the first place I checked, he said. May I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. Roberto had been our CFO for 15 years. If I couldn't trust him, I couldn't trust anyone. Paolo is looking for you, he said, glancing at the documents spread across the table. He called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. My stomach tightened. Why? Roberto's expression was grim. To formally announce your resignation due to personal reasons, and to introduce Elisa as the new CEO. Resignation? I scoffed. I haven't resigned. Maria, Roberto said gently, they're going to claim you stepped down willingly last night. There were witnesses. I thought back to the party, my silent toast, my frozen smile. From the outside, it could have looked like agreement. What about the financial discrepancies? I asked. Roberto pulled out his laptop. I've been tracking them for months. At first, I thought they were accounting errors. He opened a spreadsheet. But there's a pattern. The transfers always happen when you're traveling or otherwise occupied, never when you're in the office. I leaned closer. Someone's been accessing my accounts when they know I won't notice. Exactly. He pointed to several dates. Look, these transfers happened during your design conference in Milan, and these during your mother's hospitalization. A chill ran through me. Someone who knows my schedule intimately. Roberto nodded. Someone who might have access to your passwords and signature stamp? My mind raced to all the times Paolo had helped with paperwork, claiming he wanted to ease my burden. How he'd encouraged me to stop micromanaging the finances and focus on design. My true passion. There's more, Roberto said, pulling out a USB drive. I found evidence of a second company, registered in the Cayman Islands. The money trail leads there, then disappears. Whose name is on it? Roberto hesitated. That's what's strange. It's registered to a PM Holdings. PM Paolo Moretti. I trusted him, I whispered, the pain fresh and raw. For 40 years, I trusted him completely. There's something else. Roberto looked uncomfortable. The company is making a major move soon. A merger with Vantage Design Group. I stared at him. Vantage? Our biggest competitor? That makes no sense. Our company philosophies are completely different. It makes sense when you realize Victor Vantage has been golfing with Paolo every Sunday for the past year. Victor Vantage, flashy, profit-driven, and notorious for cutting corners. Everything Moretti Design stood against. The merger would mean layoffs, Roberto continued. Mostly from our side. They'd keep the Moretti name for brand recognition, but essentially gut everything you built. I felt sick. And Elisa knows about this? She's been in all the meetings. My own daughter. The thought was a knife twisting in my heart. Why tell me all this? I asked Roberto. You're risking your job. He smiled sadly. My father worked for your father's construction company. When it went bankrupt, your dad made sure all his employees found new jobs before he and your mother left for Italy. You gave me my start when no one else would. Loyalty still matters to some of us. My phone buzzed again. A text from my sister, Lucia. Maria, what's going on? Paolo called saying you're having some kind of breakdown. Are you okay? A breakdown. So that was their narrative. I turned to Roberto. I need to act quickly before tomorrow's board meeting. But legally, what can I do? If Paolo has been setting this up for years, the evidence is circumstantial, Roberto admitted. But there's one person who might know more. Carmen. Elisa's assistant? I was surprised. Before she worked for Elisa, she was in accounting. She processed many of these transfers. I remembered how nervous Carmen had been this morning, how she'd tried to warn me. I need to talk to her, I said. But Paolo and Elisa will be watching her. She's having dinner at Cafe Luna tonight, Roberto said. She goes there every Tuesday for their pasta special. Sits at the same table by the window. I raised an eyebrow. You seem to know a lot about Carmen's habits. Roberto blushed slightly. We've been friends for a while. I grabbed my purse and the files. I need to change clothes and get to that restaurant. If what you're saying is true, I have less than 24 hours to save my company and my reputation. As I reached for my car keys, my phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. Hello, I answered cautiously. Mrs. Moretti? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. This is Detective Sarah Jones from the Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like to ask you some questions about irregularities at Moretti Designs. Would you be willing to come to the station? I froze, looking at Roberto. May I ask what this is regarding, specifically? We've received information about possible embezzlement. $2 million is missing, Mrs. Moretti, and all signs point to you. Someone had reported me to the police. I had been outmaneuvered. I'll be there with my lawyer, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. In 2 hours. I hung up and turned to Roberto. They're moving faster than we thought. Someone's reported me for embezzlement. He paled. You need a good lawyer. First, I need evidence. I grabbed my keys with renewed determination. I'm still going to find Carmen. What if it's a trap? Roberto asked. Then I'll spring it, I replied, a plan forming in my mind. They think I'm a helpless old woman having a breakdown, but they've forgotten something important. What's that? Roberto asked. I felt a familiar fire igniting inside me. The same fire that had driven me to build a company from scratch as a young immigrant with nothing but determination. They've forgotten who taught Elisa everything she knows about strategy. And they've underestimated what a woman will do when she has nothing left to lose. As I headed for the door, my phone chimed with another text. This one made my blood run cold. It was from Paolo. I know you have the files, Maria. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Think about Sophia. Think about how this would affect your granddaughter if her grandmother went to prison. He was threatening me with my own granddaughter. The final betrayal. What kind of man had I been married to all these years? And more importantly, what was he capable of doing to protect his secrets? I parked a block away from Cafe Luna and watched the entrance. My mind raced through what I knew. Paolo had been embezzling money for years, using my name. Elisa had helped orchestrate my removal. They were planning to merge with Vantage, dismantling everything I had built. And now, the police were involved. The question was why. We were successful, profitable. Paolo had never seemed to care about money beyond our comfortable lifestyle. What had changed? I spotted Carmen through the cafe window, sitting alone. She appeared anxious, checking her phone repeatedly. I reached for my door handle when a familiar car pulled up to the curb. Elisa. I ducked down, watching my daughter stride into the cafe. Carmen's expression shifted from surprise to wariness as Elisa sat down across from her. The conversation appeared tense, with Elisa doing most of the talking and Carmen nodding stiffly. After 10 minutes, Elisa left. Carmen remained, looking shaken. I waited 5 more minutes before approaching the cafe, keeping my head low and sunglasses on. Carmen's eyes widened as I slid into the seat across from her. Mrs. Moretti, you were expecting me, I said. Not a question. She glanced around nervously. Roberto told me you might come. What did Elisa want? Carmen fidgeted with her napkin. She wanted to make sure I didn't talk to you. She said you're unwell, having delusions. And do I seem delusional to you? No, she admitted. You seem like you always have, sharp as a tack. I leaned forward. Carmen, I need to know what you've seen. The financial transfers. The ones with my signature that I never authorized. Her eyes darted to the door. Mrs. Moretti, they'll fire me. I have my mother's medical bills. I understand loyalty and fear. I placed my hand over hers. But if I go down for this, Moretti Designs won't be the same. You've seen the merger plans. You know what Vantage will do to our company. She paled. How do you know about that? Roberto told me. I squeezed her hand gently. Help me understand what's happening, Carmen. Please. She took a deep breath, then reached into her bag and pulled out a slim manila envelope. I made copies, she whispered, just in case. I knew something wasn't right when Mr. Moretti started asking me to process these transfers without the usual documentation. I opened the envelope. Inside were copies of transfer authorizations spanning 3 years, all with my signature. Did Paolo sign these himself? I asked. Carmen shook her head. Not exactly. She hesitated. It was Elisa. She has a stamp with your signature. The betrayal cut deeper. My own daughter. When did it start? I asked, my voice hollow. After she got engaged to Victor's son. I nearly dropped the papers. What did you say? Elisa and Marco Vantage. They've been dating secretly for almost 2 years. Engaged for 6 months. Marco Vantage. Victor's son. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The merger, I whispered. It's not just business. It's a family union. Carmen nodded. A dynasty. The merged company would eventually go to them. Victor and Paolo have it all planned out. I thought of all the times Elisa had canceled our lunch dates. How she'd become secretive about her personal life. I'd attributed it to her independence, never suspecting she was seeing the son of our biggest rival. What about the police investigation? I asked. Carmen looked uncomfortable. That was Paolo's idea. If you're discredited, maybe even arrested, you can't fight the merger. The board would have no choice but to proceed without you. My own husband. Setting me up for prison to secure his deals. Why? I asked, more to myself than Carmen. Why would Paolo do this? We built everything together. Carmen hesitated. There's more, Mrs. Moretti. She lowered her voice. There's a woman, younger. She works for Vantage. Of course, the final piece. I felt oddly numb, beyond the capacity for more pain. How long? 2 years, as far as I know. 2 years. While I was caring for my dying mother, working 60-hour weeks, building our legacy, Paolo had been planning my downfall with another woman. I need to speak to my lawyer, I said, gathering the documents. And then the board. The board already believes you've resigned, Carmen reminded me. And tomorrow, they'll vote on the merger. Then I need to stop that vote. I stood, determination replacing shock. Thank you, Carmen. Mrs. Moretti, she called as I turned to leave. Be careful. Mr. Moretti seems desperate. I overheard him telling Elisa that everything depends on tomorrow going smoothly. He sounded scared. I nodded, understanding the warning. A desperate man was a dangerous one. Outside, I called my oldest friend, Gabriella, a former judge who now ran a prestigious law firm. I explained the situation as concisely as possible. Come to my office. Now, she said, and bring everything you have. Artuanant. An hour later, I sat in Gabriella's office as she examined the documents, her expression growing increasingly grave. This is serious, Maria. Financial fraud, embezzlement, corporate conspiracy. She looked up at me. You could be facing criminal charges if you can't prove your innocence. I know. The good news is, these signatures don't quite match your official one. She pointed to subtle differences. A forensic handwriting expert would spot it immediately. The bad news is, the police and the board won't wait for that analysis. I need to stop tomorrow's vote, I said. If they approve the merger, everything I've built will be destroyed. Gabriella thought for a moment. You still own 30% of the company, correct? Yes. Paolo owns 20%. The remaining 50% is divided among other shareholders and board members. Then we need to convince enough shareholders to side with you. She began typing on her computer. I'm requesting an emergency injunction to halt the vote pending investigation of financial improprieties. Will it work? I asked. It depends on the judge we get. She continued typing. In the meantime, we need to gather more evidence against Paolo and build support among the other shareholders. My phone rang. Lucia. Maria, I just had the strangest conversation with Paulo, my sister said when I answered. He's telling everyone you're having some kind of mental break, that you're imagining things. He's lying, Lucia. He and Elisa have been embezzling money from the company for years, using my name. Silence. Then, I knew something was wrong. Paulo's been acting strange for months, and Elisa has been distant. I need your help, I said. You know many of our shareholders personally. Can you call them? Tell them not to vote on anything tomorrow until they hear my side. Of course, Lucia promised. I'll start now. After hanging up, I turned back to Gabriela. I still need to speak to the police. Clear my name. Without solid evidence, that's risky, she cautioned. They could arrest you. I can't run, I said. That would only make me look guilty. Gabriela nodded reluctantly. I'll go with you. But first, she pulled out a digital recorder. Let's get your full statement on record. For the next hour, I detailed everything. The company history, the fraudulent transfers, Paulo's affair, Elisa's betrayal, the secret engagement, the planned merger. Speaking it aloud made the pain fresh, but also crystallized my resolve. One thing I don't understand, Gabriela said. Why embezzle relatively small amounts over years? Paulo could have simply pushed for the merger legally. Because I would have fought it, I replied. Our business principles are completely opposed to Vantage's. I would never have agreed. So they needed to remove you completely, Gabriela concluded, and discredit you, so your objections would seem like spite. My phone buzzed with a text from Roberto. Paulo knows you met with Carmen. He fired her on the spot. She's okay, but scared. I'm taking her somewhere safe. I showed Gabriela the message. We need to move quickly. As we gathered our things, my phone rang again. Unknown number. Hello? Mom? My heart skipped. Sophia? My granddaughter, Elisa's 12-year-old daughter. Mom and Dad are fighting, she said, her voice small. About you. Dad said you're going to ruin everything. Mom's crying. Grandpa Paulo just left looking really angry. Fear gripped me. Sophia, where are you? At home. Mom doesn't know I'm calling. But I heard her say they were going to get the other documents from your house tonight. What's happening, Grandma? Other documents? What else were they hiding? Sophia, listen to me. Stay with your mother. I'm handling this. Mom said you're sick, that you're imagining things. I'm not sick, sweetheart. But there are some complicated adult problems happening. I promise I'll explain everything soon. After reassuring her, I turned to Gabriela. I need to get home. There's something in my house they need. Maria, it could be dangerous. I still have my keys. I'll be in and out before Paulo returns. Whatever they're looking for, I need to find it first. Gabriela clearly didn't like it but nodded. I'll drive. And if Paulo shows up, we leave immediately. No confrontations. As we drove toward the home I'd shared with Paulo for 35 years, I wondered what documents could be so important that they needed to retrieve them tonight. What final secrets was my husband hiding? And more urgently, what would he do if he found me there? The house was dark as Gabriela and I pulled up, parking a few houses down to avoid detection. My heart pounded as I approached the place I'd called home for decades, now feeling like a trespasser. 15 minutes, Gabriela whispered. Then we leave, documents or not. I nodded, grateful for her steady presence. We entered through the side door, moving quietly through the familiar darkness. Nothing seemed disturbed. Everything in its place, the accumulated treasures of our married life mocking me with their normalcy. Where would Paulo hide important documents? Gabriela asked. His study, I replied. Or our bedroom safe. We checked the study first. Though I'd spent countless evenings here with Paulo, the room felt different now, threatening somehow. I moved methodically through the desk drawers while Gabriela searched the bookshelves. Nothing unusual here, she reported. Let's try the bedroom. Upstairs, I went straight to the painting behind which our personal safe was hidden. The combination, our wedding date, still worked. Inside were the expected items: passports, birth certificates, property deeds. Nothing incriminating. What about digital files? Gabriela suggested. A laptop or external drive. Paolo's laptop sat on his nightstand. I reached for it, then hesitated. He would have changed his password. Try anyway. I opened it and typed in his usual password, Sophia's birthday. Access denied. I tried several other combinations. Our anniversary, his mother's name. Nothing. Wait, I said suddenly. When did Carmen say the affair started? 2 years ago. I typed in a date, 2 years ago exactly. The screen unlocked. Gabriella raised an eyebrow. An anniversary? Paolo always was sentimental, I said bitterly, already scrolling through his files. Most seemed innocuous. Company reports, financial statements, travel itineraries. Then I found a folder labeled Merger Documents. Inside were the expected contracts and presentations, but also a subfolder marked Contingency. This contained a single PDF file, a draft of an amended company charter. Gabriella, look at this. She leaned over my shoulder as I scrolled through legal jargon, until a highlighted section caught my eye. In the event of the chief executive officer's mental incapacity, criminal indictment, or voluntary resignation, all decision-making authority shall transfer immediately to the board of directors, who may, by majority vote, appoint a successor and proceed with any pending corporate actions without further shareholder approval. My hands shook with anger. They were planning to declare me mentally incompetent if I refused to step down. And the embezzlement evidence would have led to criminal charges if that failed, Gabriella added grimly. A backup plan to their backup plan. I continued scrolling and found another disturbing clause. Following such transition of authority, the former CEO's ownership shares shall be subject to mandatory repurchase by the corporation at fair market value as determined by the board. They were going to force me to sell my shares, I realized. Paolo knew I'd never agree to this merger voluntarily. Gabriella pointed to a notation at the bottom. This hasn't been implemented yet. It's scheduled to be voted on tomorrow, along with the merger. So they need me declared incompetent or criminally liable before this clause can be invoked, I said, the full picture becoming clear. That's why Paolo's been pushing the mental breakdown narrative. A noise downstairs froze us both. The front door closing. Someone's here, Gabriella whispered. I quickly copied the files to a thumb drive I found in Paolo's desk, then shut the laptop. We need to leave. Too late, she murmured, nodding toward the window where headlights swept across the driveway. Another car just pulled up. Footsteps on the stairs. No time to run. The closet, I hissed, pulling Gabriella toward my walk-in closet. We slipped inside just as the bedroom door opened. Through a crack, I could see Paolo enter, followed by a woman I didn't recognize. Tall, elegantly dressed, perhaps 40. The other woman, my replacement. Hurry, Paolo, she said. Get what you need and let's go. I don't like being here. It'll just take a minute, Paolo replied, going straight to his laptop. Maria found the financial records. We need to know if she's discovered the rest. Will it really matter after tomorrow? The woman asked. Once the board approves the new charter, she'll be out completely. If she connects the embezzlement to the offshore accounts, she could still cause problems. Paolo opened his laptop, frowning when he found it already unlocked. That's strange. The woman moved closer to him. What? I could have sworn I locked this. He glanced around the room suspiciously. My heart hammered so loudly I was certain they would hear it. Beside me, Gabriella reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over the emergency call button. Paolo turned back to his computer, checking the files. Someone's been here, he said sharply. These documents were accessed recently. The woman's voice turned anxious. You think Maria was here? Should we call the police? Paolo laughed bitterly. And tell them what? That my wife accessed her own computer in her own house? This isn't a joke, Paolo. Victor won't proceed with the merger if there's any chance of legal complications. There won't be, Paolo snapped. The board trusts me. They'll believe Maria's having a breakdown. The evidence of embezzlement is convincing. And Elisa? The woman asked. Is she still on board? Paolo's expression darkened. She has no choice. She's in too deep now. My own husband discussing my daughter like she was a pawn in his game. Rage bubbled up inside me, nearly overriding my caution. What about the girl? The woman asked. Your granddaughter. Sophia will be fine, Paolo said dismissively. Children adapt. And if Maria fights back? Goes to the press? Paolo closed his laptop, his face hardening into an expression I'd never seen before. Then I'll release the medical records. The woman looked confused. What medical records? From her mother's illness. Maria had a breakdown after her death. Exhaustion, grief, insomnia. She saw a therapist for months. It's all documented. I felt sick. I'd confided in Paolo during the darkest period of my life. After losing my mother to a long illness, he'd seemed so supportive, encouraging me to seek help. Now I realized he'd been collecting ammunition. Is that really necessary? The woman asked, sounding uncomfortable. Whatever it takes, Paolo replied coldly. I've spent 35 years in her shadow, playing the supportive husband to the brilliant Maria Moretti. Do you know what it's like to be known as Maria's husband at every industry event? To have people assume your success is due to your wife's connections? The raw bitterness in his voice stunned me. All these years, I'd thought we were partners, that he was proud of what we'd built together. After tomorrow, none of that will matter, the woman said soothingly. You'll be co-CEO of the largest design firm in the country. And Maria will be a footnote, Paolo agreed, smiling again. Now let's check the safe. There might be other copies. They moved to the safe, Paolo dialing the combination. Finding nothing unusual, he seemed satisfied. Let's go, he said. I need to call Victor, assure him everything's on track. When they left, I waited a full minute before stepping out of the closet, my legs shaking. Maria, Gabriella said softly. I'm so sorry. I couldn't speak. 35 years of marriage, a lifetime of memories, all built on resentment I never knew existed. We have what we need, she continued, gesturing to the thumb drive clutched in my hand. This proves conspiracy and intent. Let's go before they come back. I nodded mechanically, following her downstairs and out to the car. Only when we were several blocks away did the shock begin to subside, replaced by cold determination. Take me to the police station, I said. It's time to clear my name. At the station, Detective Jones listened impassively as I presented my evidence. The fraudulent transfers, the amended charter, my statement about Paolo's confession at the house. This is compelling, Mrs. Moretti, she said finally. But without corroboration, it's essentially your word against theirs. Check the transfer dates against my travel records, I urged. You'll see I wasn't even in the country for many of them. And the signatures, they're similar to mine, but not identical. We'll investigate, she promised. But these things take time. I don't have time, I insisted. Tomorrow the board votes on this merger and the amended charter. Once that happens, I lose everything. I understand your frustration, but I can't arrest someone based on unverified accusations. Gabriella stepped in. What about a restraining order? To prevent the board meeting from proceeding until the investigation is complete. That would need a judge's approval, Detective Jones replied. At this hour, my phone rang. Roberto. I excused myself to answer. Maria. Carmen got a call from the office assistant. Paolo's called an earlier board meeting, 8 a.m. instead of 10. He's trying to push the vote through before you can intervene. My stomach dropped. That's only 6 hours from now. There's something else, Roberto continued. I've been monitoring the company email server. Elisa just sent a message to all board members with a medical report attached. About you. It suggests you've been experiencing memory issues and paranoid delusions. The final betrayal. My daughter using my private medical history against me. I turned back to Detective Jones. Did you hear that? They're moving faster, using fabricated medical records to discredit me. She still looked uncertain. Mrs. Moretti, my patience snapped. Detective, I've built a company from nothing, created jobs for hundreds of people. I've never had so much as a parking ticket. Now my husband and daughter are stealing everything I've worked for, and you're telling me to wait? For what? Until they've destroyed my reputation, stolen my company, and emptied my bank accounts? The room fell silent. Detective Jones studied me for a long moment. There is one thing we can do, she said finally. We can bring your husband in for questioning tonight. It won't stop the board meeting, but it might delay him long enough for you to attend. It wasn't much, but it was something. Do it. As Detective Jones left to make arrangements, I turned to Gabriella. I need to get to that board meeting, make my case directly to the shareholders. Even if Paolo is detained, Elisa will still be there, she warned. And she'll have those medical records. I thought about my daughter, the little girl I'd taught to draw, the teenager who'd shadowed me at work, the woman who now sought to destroy me. Where had I gone wrong? Then I need to be prepared, I said, a plan forming. And I know exactly who can help me. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Hello? Daniel, I said. It's Maria Moretti. I need your help with Elisa. My former son-in-law, the father Elisa had cut out of Sophia's life 5 years ago. The man who knew better than anyone what my daughter was capable of when ambition overtook her conscience. Dawn broke as I stood outside Moretti Design's headquarters, the building gleaming in the early morning light. Daniel stood beside me, his presence both familiar and strange after 5 years of absence. You sure about this? He asked, his voice gentle. Once we go in, there's no turning back. I thought of Paolo's face in our bedroom last night, the contempt, the bitterness that had apparently festered for decades. I'm sure, I replied. They left me no choice. After my call to Daniel, things had moved quickly. As a psychiatrist, he had reviewed the medical report Elisa had circulated. The diagnosis was exaggerated, the symptoms fabricated. He had prepared a formal statement countering the claims. Elisa always was ruthless in business, Daniel said quietly as we approached the building. But I never thought she'd turn on you. Neither did I. The pain of my daughter's betrayal was still raw. Do you think she ever loved the company? The vision? Daniel considered this. She loved the success, the status, not the work itself, not like you do. We entered through the front doors, where security guards looked startled to see me. Mrs. Moretti, we were told you were unwell. As you can see, I'm perfectly fine, I replied coolly. Is the board assembled? Yes, ma'am. 7th floor. But, thank you. I swept past them toward the elevator, Daniel following close behind. In the elevator, I checked my phone. A text from Detective Jones. Paolo Moretti detained for questioning. We'll hold him as long as legally possible. One obstacle removed, but Elisa would still be there. The elevator doors opened onto the 7th floor. Through the glass walls of the boardroom, I could see them. 10 board members plus Elisa at the head of the table. Victor Vantage sat beside her, looking smug. His son Marco, presumably Elisa's secret fiancé, was there too. Conversation stopped abruptly as I entered. Daniel a step behind me. Shock registered on every face. Elisa recovered first. Mother, she said smoothly, we didn't expect you. You should be resting. I've rested enough, I replied, taking in the room. Some board members looked uncomfortable, others confused. Roberto sat near the back, giving me a subtle nod. Where's Paolo? Victor Vantage asked sharply. My husband is currently explaining to the police how $2 million disappeared from the company accounts, I said calmly, and why my signature appears on transfers I never authorized. Murmurs rippled through the room. Elisa's composure slipped momentarily before she recovered. Mother, you're confused, she said, her voice laden with rehearsed concern. We've all seen the medical reports. Fabricated, Daniel interrupted, stepping forward. Dr. Daniel Alvarez, former chief of psychiatry at Memorial Hospital. I've reviewed the so-called reports about Maria. They're grossly misrepresented, if not entirely fraudulent. Elisa's face hardened at the sight of her ex-husband. What is he doing here? This is a closed board meeting. Dr. Alvarez is here as my medical advocate, I said, and I'm here as the founder and largest shareholder of Moretti Designs. I placed my portfolio on the table. Before you vote on anything, I suggest you review these documents. I distributed copies of everything. The fraudulent transfers, the offshore accounts traced to Paolo, the draft charter with its manipulative clauses, and transcripts of recordings Roberto had secretly made of conversations between Paolo and Elisa discussing the scheme. Ms. Moretti has been systematically defrauded, Gabriella said, entering the room behind us, by her husband and, regrettably, her daughter. Victor Vantage stood abruptly. I don't know what game you're playing, Maria, but I won't be part of it. This merger is legitimate business. Is it? I asked. Because according to these documents, you knew about the embezzlement. In fact, some of the stolen funds were transferred to accounts linked to Vantage companies. The color drained from Victor's face. Mother, this is ridiculous, Elisa said, but her voice wavered. You're twisting everything because you can't accept change. You can't accept that it's time to step aside. Step aside? Is that what you call this ambush? I looked around the table. Let me be clear. I built this company from nothing. I'm not opposed to change or growth. I'm opposed to deception, to theft, to betrayal. Board members were flipping through the documents, expressions growing increasingly troubled. Roberto stood up. As CFO, I can confirm these records are accurate, he said. I've been investigating these discrepancies for months. Elisa glared at him. You're fired. Actually, he's not, I countered. As the largest shareholder, I moved to immediately suspend all executive powers from Elisa Moretti, pending a full investigation into financial irregularities. I second the motion, said Janet Clark, our longest-serving board member. All in favor? Gabriella called. Hands rose around the table, slowly at first, then with more confidence. All except Victor, Marco, and two others known to be Paolo's allies. Motion carries, Gabriella declared. Elisa looked stunned. You can't do this. Dad and I made a terrible mistake, I finished for her. You thought I was just a figurehead, that the company's success was despite me, not because of me. You forgot who trained you, Elisa, who taught you everything you know. But everything I thought I knew about my daughter was being rewritten before my eyes. The ambitious young woman I'd mentored had become someone I barely recognized, calculating, cold, willing to destroy her own mother's reputation for power. What about the merger? Victor demanded. We have a binding agreement. Signed under false pretenses, Gabriella interjected, and contingent on a board vote that hasn't occurred. Your legal position is precarious, Mr. Vantage. Marco Vantage stood, finally addressing Elisa directly. You said this would be clean, legal, that your mother was stepping down willingly. She was supposed to, Elisa hissed. I studied my daughter's fiancé, handsome, polished, clearly uncomfortable with the turn of events. You didn't know about the embezzlement, did you, Marco? He hesitated, glancing at his father. I was told this was a straightforward merger between compatible companies. It was never going to be that, I said. Moretti Designs was built on principles of sustainability, ethical sourcing, and quality. Your father's company cuts corners to maximize profits. Our values are fundamentally opposed. Victor slammed his hand on the table. This is business, not philosophy. For me, they're inseparable, I replied calmly. That's something Paolo never understood either. The boardroom doors burst open. Sophia stood there, breathing hard, clearly having run from somewhere. Behind her, Carmen appeared, looking apologetic. I'm sorry, Mrs. Moretti. She insisted on coming when she heard what was happening. Grandma, Sophia rushed to me, then turned to face her mother. Is it true? Did you and Grandpa try to hurt Grandma? Elisa paled. Sophia, you shouldn't be here. This is adult business. She has a right to understand what's happening to her family, I said, putting an arm around my granddaughter's shoulders. Sophia looked around the room, her young face solemn. Last night, I heard Mom on the phone. She said Grandma was becoming a problem and that Paolo would handle it. It scared me. A hush fell over the room. Even Elisa seemed at a loss for words. Mr. Vantage, I said into the silence, I suggest you and your son leave now. This merger will not be happening. Not today. Not ever. Victor gathered his things, pausing only to give Elisa a cold look. This partnership is terminated. All of it. He nodded meaningfully toward Marco, who avoided Elisa's gaze as they left. With the Vantages gone, I turned back to the board. I move that we appoint Roberto as interim CEO, while I take a temporary advisory role. We need stability while we sort through this mess and rebuild trust. The vote was unanimous. Elisa sat frozen, her carefully constructed plans crumbling around her. What happens now? Janet asked. To Paolo and Elisa? I looked at my daughter, the child I'd raised, the woman who'd betrayed me. Despite everything, part of me still loved her. That depends on them, I said. The evidence of financial fraud will be turned over to the authorities. What happens next is in their hands. You'd send your own husband and daughter to prison? Elisa asked, incredulous. I didn't forge signatures or embezzle funds, I replied. You made your choices. Sophia squeezed my hand. Grandma, can I stay with you for a while? I don't want to go home with Mom right now. The simple request nearly broke my composure. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The meeting adjourned, board members filing out with promises of support. Soon, only Elisa, Sophia, Daniel, and I remained. You've won, Elisa said bitterly. Are you happy now? Happy? I shook my head. My husband of 35 years betrayed me. My daughter conspired against me. The company I built was nearly destroyed. No, Elisa. I'm not happy. I'm heartbroken. Sophia looked between us, tears in her eyes. Why did you do it, Mom? Grandma always supported you. Elisa had no answer. Or perhaps finally she was confronting the enormity of what she'd done. Take some time to think, Elisa, I said quietly, about what you really want, about the kind of person you want to be. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'll be there. Just like that? You'd forgive me? Disbelief colored her voice. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, I replied. Trust is earned. If you want to rebuild it, you'll have to prove yourself, not with words, but actions. I took Sophia's hand and turned to leave. Daniel followed, pausing at the door. She gets it from you, you know, he said softly. The strength, the determination. Maybe, I acknowledged. But somewhere along the way, she lost the compassion. Outside, the morning sun illuminated the city I'd called home for decades. Everything had changed in just 48 hours. My marriage was over. My relationship with my daughter fractured. The company I'd built would need careful rebuilding. Yet standing there with Sophia's hand in mine, I felt something unexpected. Not closure, but a beginning. The freedom to rewrite the rules of my own life, on my own terms. What now, Grandma? Sophia asked. I squeezed her hand. Now we start over. Together.